I was recently asked to put together a workshop and come out and talk to some student veterans at a local college about writing resumes and some of the tips and tricks that I've personally helped veterans come up with, some of the strategies or outside the box techniques that I use when I'm mentoring young veterans and writing their resumes. This is going to be sort of my digital version of that presentation. So my name is Justin Stuckart. I'm an 11-year Army veteran. I got out of the Army about 5 years ago now. And since I've been out, I've been doing a lot in the veteran community, from nonprofit work. I sit on a couple of boards, do a lot of advising. I do a lot of public speaking about some of the veteran issues and challenges that they face and we deal with on a day-to-day basis when it comes to like narratives and stigmas and those types of things. And then I also do a lot of work with the positive stuff that's happening with veterans when it comes to like entrepreneurship, positive impacts and leadership that's going on in the community. So today we're going to focus mainly on resumes. I want to keep it as short and to the point as I can, so we'll jump right into it. Veteran resumes, these are the different things that we'll go through. I want to talk about the types of resumes, a master resume, the different info sources that are unique to veterans when it comes to putting together that master resume. We'll talk a little bit about jargon, tailoring your resume to the job descriptions, and then we'll talk about some of the stigmas and narratives that veterans face, not only when they're writing their resume, but ideally when they're doing the interview immediately afterwards. So first off, when it comes to the type of resumes, there's two main types of resumes that people talk about. Your traditional resume is going to be a chronological resume like this one. So typically that's going to have your job titles and the companies you worked for in some sort of chronological order. This is great if you have extensive experience or you've held multiple positions at companies in that field. So the one that's written here is for a business consultant. If you have 11 years experience with the title business consultant and that's what you're applying for, chronological resume is going to be perfect for that, because it shows that you've been doing it for a long time, you've been successful already at that job, and that you're current and up to date with what's going on with it. For veterans, this is sometimes a little bit of a challenge because some of the titles and positions don't really translate over well. And for me, for example, I spent 11 years in the Army, so my chronological resume is only going to have a couple different titles ever because I spent a long time at those companies. So and they don't appear to translate very well to some of the jobs that I've applied for. Now, the skills and abilities that I used and learned while I held those positions absolutely translate to the civilian jobs or to jobs out here in corporate America, but they just don't show well on a chronological resume. So I use, what I recommend a lot of veterans use, is something more like this. They call it sometimes a functional resume or a skills-based resume. With a chronological resume, you would put the job titles and then bullets that support what you did at that job. With a functional resume, you would put more of these skill sets or functions that you had and then bullets that support each of those areas. So this is really good if you held one job title for a long time, but you were good at a couple of different sets of skills that while you were there, like in the Army. So it's a little bit easier to translate some of the experience that you have into a format that corporate America understands better. So before you put together one of these resumes, I always recommend that you put together a master resume. So the master resume is a resume that's basically for your eyes only. You would never send this to anybody. You're not going to use this one specifically to apply for a job, but there's no page limits. You don't really have to make it pretty. The idea behind a master resume is just a place that you can put all the bullets and details possible, everything you can come up with. So for veterans specifically, you would get this from like any kind of evaluation reports. If you were an NCO, then you would do all your NCO evaluation reports. If you're an officer, it'd be all your officer evaluation reports. You look at any award recommendations you ever had, some of the bullets and statements that were on there to support why, to justify why you got the award. All make really good bullets for a resume. Any training reports, certifications that you've been given, any assigned duties that you had are sometimes really interesting for resumes. And then you could also do that with jobs that you've had since you've been out, or even experience that you have with things that you've been learning personally. Um, my master resume, for example, looks something like this. So I again, I've formatted it in a way that it's not really pretty or easy to use, but as I type different professional summaries or sometimes objectives or any of that kind of stuff, I would just copy and paste all of them right onto here. I have a list of core competencies. On LinkedIn, you would see this as skills, but just basically little phrases of things that I could argue that I am skilled at and that I have. And then below that, I have bullets. And so I've broken them up into different functions or skills so that they fit really well into a functional resume. So for example, this one says process improvement, and I went through and just put all of these different bullets that I've come up with or that I've found talking about how I've improved processes at different units. I did the same thing for innovation and for leadership, for entrepreneurship, contract management, recruiting, training. And then down at the bottom here, I have senior rater bullet comments. Typically your senior rater on your evaluation reports is going to be a lot more experienced at writing really good and strong bullets to support, you getting promotions or awards. So sometimes those are really good kind of bullets, that you can use. I keep all my employment history on here. I keep any kind of education, any certificates that I've ever gotten, any college degrees, that kind of stuff. I keep a section for community involvement, so any volunteering that I do. I plan to eventually start putting my public speaking experience on here, so different conferences and stuff that I've been asked to speak at. I'll put all of that on there. Military training and honors, I just copied and pasted it all onto here. Application experience, that's good for some of the jobs that I apply for that require software experience. And then after that I have it's called a VMET, and I basically just copied and pasted from that onto here, and I'll talk to you about what that means here in 1 second. So that is a master resume, and then you would use that to later tailor your resume down to fit a job description to make that 1 page or sometimes 2 page resume. So the question is, where do you get all of those things? I talked briefly about the VMET and how that works. First, this is where you get those things. First, you need to create an account with MilConnect. You can just type in MilConnect and it'll help you start your account there. Once you have that account, you'll get into the defense personnel records. That's where you can pull your DD-214. You can pull all your evaluation reports. You can pull your whole record, everything from OMPF. And then there's also a program called DoD TAP, so the Department of Defense Transition Assistance Program. I'm sure you've heard of it, or at least the veterans have heard of it. I promise it's a really good program. Most of us just blew it off when we were getting out, but that you still have access to some things through that program, and some of it's pretty good. So I'll show you what that looks like. This is the MilConnect site for DMDC. So you would go to this site. The URL is up top. If you can't see it for some reason, send me a message and I'll send it to you. But just type DMDC or MilConnect into your search browser, you'll find it. From here, you click sign in. If you don't already have an account, this is where it'll tell you have to create an account. This DS login account is kind of a pain to create, but you only have to do it once. And once you get through it, it gives you access to everything government, veteran related. So you log into that. It's going to bring you back to that same site. So from here, you would go to correspondence and documentation, and we'll start out with that DPRIS first, the Defense Personnel Records Information. So it takes a little bit of time to load because it's going through filing cabinet. I don't know. It just takes a while. It's not the fastest site in the world, but it is a phenomenal resource to get your information really, really fast. So you click on your personnel file, request my personnel file, you type in all your information, and then down here you just pick what files you want. For the purposes of creating your master resume, you're going to look for the performance group and the professional history group. For any other purposes, any other veteran stuff you need, you can get your DD-214 here, your service verifications, discharge. You can get a lot of different things from here that most people are going to tell you you need to go to a different site for, and it'll take 2 weeks. And this, you'll get this today. You can get this in a couple hours. And then from there, once you hit, to send the request and everything, you'll get an email eventually. Usually it takes about 20-30 minutes saying that your download is ready. So you log back in, you come back to this page, and it would show you, so you log back in, you go back to the DPress, your personnel file, and right here it'll tell you that you have a download ready. So you click view files, and it would show you whatever, an 80-page list of different things. This is an excerpt from mine, so these are where I would take bullets to add to my master resume. I use Adobe when I do it. Adobe will recognize it as text, so you can basically just highlight it, copy and paste it right over to your master resume. And on here, if you did great things while you're in the military, you might find good bullet points to put in there. So this, for example, is a recommendation for award that I had. And so I would look through here for good bullet points. Typically, things that are qualitative or quantitative, with things with numbers really, are a lot better as bullets on a resume. It doesn't look as much like bragging, it looks like proof. And instead of increased performance or increased production, if you increase production by a certain amount, then that is a lot more substantial and stronger. So here, during his tenure, a 58% increase over the last fiscal year. That's huge. Took the center from the bottom 20 in all of USREC, which is all U.S. Army recruiting, and got them to the top 20% within a year. Those are phenomenal bullet points that I can later tailor to fit into a corporate America type bullet that makes sense. So that's where you would get a lot of those bullets. And then you could go to, from that main screen again, a Mill Connect. You have correspondence documentation, and you can go down here to DoD Transition Assistance Program. Again, it takes a little bit of time for it to load, but it's nothing too crazy. And this is part of the program that was available to you, or was available to all the veterans as they got out of the military. Sometimes we took advantage of it, sometimes we did not. You still have access to some of the stuff. In here you can look up all the different records and things that you did while you were transitioning. But most important to me personally, here on this navigation, you go over to VMET and click on that, and then you will go to the VMET document and hit submit. Here again, it takes a little bit of time for it to pull it, but it's pretty much automated, so it's pretty quick. And what you'll find from that is going to look like this. And this is your verification of military experience and training. And basically what it is it's like the JST transcripts or your ACE transcripts, where an organization has translated all the different job titles in the military into a more civilian type language, or an easier to explain language in corporate America. So here for 79 Romeo, which was my MOS when I got out, that's my last job in the Army, which is recruiter. Here it breaks it down, so I recruit qualified personnel for entry into the Army, applicable regulations, supervise, skill level 30, was based on my ranks. So recruit interview counsel, explain benefits, prepare enlistment forms and documents, arrange transportation, assist in market research and analysis, so on and so forth. But in here you can pull some really good things, some really good bullets to talk about the job titles or the job descriptions that you had, and kind of what you did in those job descriptions. It'll have all the dates. Obviously, some jobs are going to have more applicable translations than others. Like this one here is 11 Bravo. That's infantry. That's the job I started out in. So lead supervise, remember, infantry unit, 10 to 20 people, individual weapons, machine guns, anti-armor weapons, offensive and defensive ground combat. That's not going to apply to a lot of jobs that I've been applying for since I've been out. So you don't need everything, but take what might be applicable and put it on your master resume, and if you need it, at least you'll have it on there. It's also going to have any additional trainings you've ever gone to, any like little skill courses, combat lifesaver, any of that kind of stuff. It'll all be in here. It'll talk a little bit about what happens at those schools and some of the things that you learn. So it's a really good resource when you're talking about coming up with bullets for your resume. So the next thing we're going to talk about is jargon. So I'm sure you've heard it before when you're talking about translating veteran resumes into corporate America talk, but it's pretty common sense stuff, but it still happens every day. I still get majors that have just recently UTS sending me resumes that have just crazy stuff on there. Lots of acronyms, especially when it comes to talking about like units or some of the different job titles that you've had. If only people in the military understand it, then it's useless on your resume. You might as well not even put it on there. It doesn't mean anything at all, right? So like it says down here, if it sounds awesome to you, but it may mean nothing to them. There are a lot of examples of that. A great way to test for that is to give your resume to somebody other than who you're applying to first and ask them to just read through it and see if they can explain to you what the different things mean on there. If they say, you know what, I have no idea what this means, then that's probably jargon, right? That probably fits into that area, and you need to better translate it. There's tons of resources, some of which I already showed you on how to do that. One example, I could put on there, and it might sound really awesome to people in the military, that I was the senior NCOIC for 3rd Platoon Alpha Company 1-6 Infantry in 1st Armored Division, both in garrison and in combat zones. Again, that sounds really cool to people that are in the military, but I could also write it, that I managed, trained, and counseled a staff of 30 people, planned and coordinated operations in a variety of environments, right? So that just fits a lot better into some of the jobs that I personally apply for or have applied for in the past. And it's going to be a lot more valuable on that piece of paper. When we're talking about tailoring the resume, you're really tailoring it for two different audiences. One audience is going to be a very automated bot or a robot that is looking through the resumes first. You see this with a lot of the bigger corporations, even getting into some of the medium-sized corporations these days, but they use that to get through the 1,500 resumes that applied, so they can get it down to a reasonable number that they can actually screen through and then interview significantly less. So here's some tips for some of those types of tailoring. So first off, computers are dumb. They're not going to translate things. They're not going to understand that you meant one thing, but wrote it in a different way all the time. So these computers or these bots are looking for very specific key phrases, keywords, qualifications, and more or less excuses to disqualify you and take you out of the pile. So again, they can get it down to a manageable size. Computers and bots don't have any emotion. So even though you have a lot of community involvement and you've served your country and you've done all these amazing things, okay, they don't care at all. There is zero preference for that when it comes to a bot. They're also not amazing at reading weird fonts, right? So don't use Lucida handwriting. Don't use Wingdings or whatever crazy stuff you want to put on there. Unless you're applying for a graphic design job, you don't need a resume that looks like you're a graphic designer, which means you can get rid of all the Pinterest resume formats that you found that look really cool and have your headshot up in the corner and a weird graph on the side. Get rid of all of that. It's not quick and easy to look through, and while it does help you stick out from the rest, which is what it says that it does, it's in a bad way. So the bots won't see anything at all there, which means you might not even make it to a human being. But the human beings that see it, if they don't understand it right away, they're probably not going to continue looking at it. You need to integrate their language into your resume. So if a job description says required experience in sales, and you put, I have experience in convincing people to do things I want. You and I could probably discuss how that's very similar or maybe even the same thing. The computer thinks that those are like apples and oranges. They have nothing to do with each other at all, and it sees that you have no experience in sales, so you will not pass to the next level. You need to have their required qualifications. When you're looking at a job description, usually down near the bottom, it's going to be required experience, or it's going to say mandatory, it's going to say minimum, it's going to say at least. Any of those phrases means that those qualifications are required, and those are really easy ways for them to disqualify you to go on to the next level and to get an interview. And when we're talking about people looking at a resume, they are slightly smarter, right? So if you get to that stage, they may be able to translate some of those things. They also have a little bit of emotion sometimes, so they're the ones that might care that you're very involved in the community and that you serve your country and you've done all these amazing things and you're just a good person. Here's a really good time to match the company's culture and lingo, and you can figure out what the company's culture and lingo are really easily just by just going on their website. You can go to the About Us section, and it's going to say a lot of things about who they are, give their mission statement, their vision statement, some of the key things that they care about. But this is a good time for you to match that. So if they say that, they just really hope to inspire America's youth to get into the STEM field, well, on your resume, you could put something along the lines of that you are very motivated and interested in helping show the youth in America, some of the different jobs and education pieces that are out there for STEM fields, or something very similar. You can try to match. Obviously, don't look like you copied and pasted it because they're going to catch that right away and they know that. But fit it. If you're feeling your culture, your own personal, being aligns with what the company does, then let them know that, but let them know in a way that they don't have to translate it, but so that's pretty clear to them. Typically, when a human being is looking at a resume, they're spending about 7 seconds, right? So it depends on where you look on Google. When I looked it up yesterday, it said about 7 seconds. I've looked it up in the past, and it was anywhere between 5 and 12 seconds, but it's a very, very short period of time. For most resumes, everybody's going to recommend either 1 or 2 pages at the absolute max. Nobody's going to be able to look at 2 pages of information in 7 seconds. So this is where the top of the resume, the first, little bit is going to matter a lot more than the rest. You can, you'll see like on websites and stuff, the landing page or the splash page, is more important than everything else. But you really have to get something in there, or a lot of something in there that's going to grab their attention and get them to take you to the next step. So now we'll talk about tailoring your resume and kind of how that works. First, you want to find the job description that you're applying for. Again, you're already going to have a master resume, so that's really the hardest part, or the most tedious part is just putting together that master resume. But now you want to find the job description that you want to apply for. You're going to turn that job description into a checklist, and then you're going to tailor your resume to that checklist. And I'll show you how that works here. Understand that when I say tailoring your resume, it doesn't mean creating things, right? So you can tailor your resume to show how you are experienced in something they're asking for. You should not create things that you're good at. So if you're not good at it, don't lie about it and put it on there and think that that's what tailoring to the job description is, okay? Because that's just lying. They're going to figure it out in the interview, and if they don't, they're absolutely going to figure it out once they hire you. It's going to be a waste of your time, waste of their time, potentially burning bridges, that kind of stuff. You just don't do it. But if you do have what they're looking for, you can tailor it just so that they clearly understand that you have what they're looking for. I pulled this job description off of Indeed.com recently. This is a collections manager here in Fort Lauderdale. So this is what a typical job description is going to look like. It'll have a little blurb at the top about what you're going to do. It'll kind of describe some of the responsibilities and skill sets, and then down at the bottom part it'll have the requirements for the job, and talk about salary, that kind of stuff. So right away, if this is something you're interested in, all I did was select it all, copied and pasted it into Microsoft Word, and then I went through and I highlighted things that I thought could be bullets, right? So anything that they mentioned more than once, anything that seemed like a separate skill set, I would highlight. And then I would hit enter after each of those, or right before them, either way, and I would turn that into a bullet list and delete any of the fluff that they have in there that just makes it sound prettier. And now I have a checklist. So this is the checklist that I'm going to use as I build my resume. So here is my resume that I created based off the checklist, and the way it kind of works is Like I said, at the top is going to be the most important section. So any of these things that are required or mandatory or minimum, those types of things, I want to put as far up on my resume as I can. So here it says, skills required 11 years of similar or related experience to this manager position. So I put over 11 years of proven leadership experience ranging from small, blah, 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 right? So I actually initially, in one of my objectives that I had on my master resume, I had this written as over 1 years of proven leadership, right? So over 11, but I had it numerically. Because they wrote out 11 in their job description, I wrote out 11 in my resume. And I did that because if they copied and pasted these things from the job description into the bot, into the tool that they're using to search for resumes, maybe they won't catch it. I don't know. It's probably smart enough for that, but I don't want to leave it up to chance. So then I continued on through. They put manager in a number of places, so I put management, improvement in mine. They put supervisor in a number of places, so I put in a supervisory role. They put train, I put train. They put coach, I put coach. They put mentoring, or they put motivating. So I went through and did all of those things. This area gets a little interesting, right? So it says skills required, bachelor's degree. I don't have a bachelor's degree, right? And I didn't have a bachelor's degree when I put this together. So one thing that I do, and I know that it looks crazy, right? So bear with me for just a second, is I put bachelor's degree level business experience stemming from over 10 years, and I justify it. Now, the reason I do this is I understand that if a human being gets to this point in my resume and reads that, they're going to think that it's not as good as a bachelor's degree. Got it. And I can explain it in an interview, no problem, that I have more skill sets in that area than somebody else that just finally got their bachelor's degree, right? So, but what this does do for me is if the bot is searching for a bachelor's degree, when they search my resume, they're going to find bachelor's degree, and it's going to pass me for that. They're going to give me that little check mark, and it's going to get me to a human being where, again, some of the emotion and some of the interpretation might come into play. Finally, we're going to talk a little bit about stigmas. So let's face it, veterans, stigmas exist, right? So there are different stigmas out there. There are narratives out there about veterans. It's as you write your resume, and especially as you go into the interview, it's just important to know what they are, and so that you have the opportunity to prove that they are misconceptions, right? So what are some of the stigmas that are out there, specifically when it comes to hiring veterans? One is that a lot of people that don't have experience with the military or with veterans, they believe that everybody is a drill sergeant, right? So they think that if they hire you, you're going to come into the company and you're just going to be screaming at people and be violent and, just a crazy person all the time. Obviously, that's ridiculous. It's a misconception, but it's not their fault, right? So there's no point in arguing about it, but just understand that it exists. And so in your resume, you may want to show things like, proven customer service experience or, team building and those kinds of things that overcome this stigma and show that you're not going to be like that for their company. Another big stigma that's out there is that everybody's infantry, right? So people that have no experience with the military, don't know a lot of veterans, they believe that these right here are the 8 different jobs that you can have in any branch of the military, right? You can carry a machine gun, an Uzi, another machine gun, a rocket launcher, a grenade machine gun, pistol and a machine gun. You can throw grenades, or you can look through binoculars and wave at people, right? So they think that those are the only jobs that exist out there. Obviously, that's another ridiculous misconception about the military, but you need to be able to translate your experience and show that that's not the case, that you actually have, real skill sets that are valuable to a corporation and, reason they should hire you. PTSD, right? So they believe that everybody has PTSD. The media tells them that. Lots of people have this stigma about veterans, but they think not everybody, right? But potentially some HR professionals are going to believe that a veteran is more of a liability than an asset. So there's an opportunity or a chance that something might happen, a loud noise or whatever could trigger something, and that veteran could go off at the company. Here it talks about a little bit about assets and liabilities. In my opinion, everybody that you ever have any kind of relationship with, be it work, professional, personal, whatever it is either an asset or a liability to you. So If they provide more than they hurt or take, they're an asset. If they take a lot more than they provide, then obviously they're a liability. There's a huge stigma out there that veterans may be a liability to a company. So you need to prove on paper and then in the interview that you are an asset. Here, leading from the front, being a leader of people is not always a stigma that exists about veterans. But for some people it is, right? So that it's phenomenal. You need to live up to that if you can, or prove that it's not the case, if for some reason it's not the case. Some of the final notes I wanted to go through. First off, everybody has an opinion, right? So not everybody's going to give you the same advice on resumes, right? If you asked 10 different people that have experience with resumes what the best practices are for writing resumes, or you showed them your resume and asked them to critique it, they're going to give you 10 different bits of advice on how to do that. So, it is what it is. Just take my advice with all of the other advice and use what works for you. LinkedIn, if you don't already have a LinkedIn, you absolutely need a LinkedIn. In corporate America, in the professional world, it is just about mandatory to prove that you exist, to prove that you have some sort of credibility and that they can kind of vet you and feel like you're not hiding anything. Create a LinkedIn, put some work into it, and make it look professional. It should be very similar to either your master resume or your tailored resume, depending on how much you want to get into it. On LinkedIn, you have the opportunity to create a custom URL. That's the web address that goes to your page. Do this because on your resume, when your contact information, you can put your LinkedIn profile. It looks really professional if it says linkedin.com/Justin Stuckart. It looks not professional at all if it says linkedin.com/Justin Stuckart 54BRTYW. All right, so create the custom URL. It takes 2 seconds, and it makes a big difference. You can also use LinkedIn to do research on the companies that you're applying to. Again, you can learn about some of their culture, some of their lingo, and the things that are important to them. I could do a whole nother video later if you're interested about how to use LinkedIn for a variety of different things. But veterans get free premium accounts for LinkedIn. You can Google veteran premium account. It'll show you how to get access to that. But with that, you can really reach out directly to some of these HR professionals and ask for advice, or ask if they would help you build your resume, those types of things. And you get a lot of free assistance that way and kind of help get your foot in the door at different organizations. Grammarly.com is a phenomenal resource, not only for resumes, but for any kind of writing. It's basically a plug-in to the Microsoft programs, or even to some of the different web browsers, to your email. It's a lot better than the built-in spell and grammar checks, because it not only helps you with the spelling and the basic punctuation and stuff like that, but it really gets into some of the word choice and some of the tone of voice types of things. It's a really cool program. It's free. Networking. Okay, I can never say enough about networking. I'm very aggressive at networking, but with networking, you can potentially meet somebody that can walk your resume right into a decision maker, as opposed to applying online. I have yet to even meet someone that got a livable wage job applying online. Okay, so I'll say that again. What that means is that I've never met anybody that went to an Indeed.com or some other generic, job listing site, filled out the form on there, attached their resume, and then ended up working for that company. Never. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen, okay? But it is much easier and more efficient to meet somebody or find somebody that can help walk it in, right? So it's the difference between zeroing an M16 and shooting a shotgun, right? It takes a little bit more work. You're not going to send out nearly as many resumes if you're targeting them and networking for them and that kind of thing, but you're going to hit a lot more targets. You're going to get a lot more interviews, and you're going to waste a lot less time, potentially get a lot better jobs. So do it. These are some of the things we talked about. Different types of resumes, your master resume, some of the info sources you have for resumes. Talked a little bit about jargon, tailoring your resume, and some of the stigmas that veterans face when it comes to the resumes and the interviews. If you have any questions, comments, or snide remarks, feel free to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm the only Justin Stuckart on there. I'm on Facebook. I'll also share with you my email address for one of my companies. You're welcome to reach out to me there. And if you have any other questions, any other topics you want me to talk about, or things that you want a little bit more details on, or you want more in depth, definitely reach out to me and I'll put them together. I'm hoping to do a lot more of this and share some of the things that I normally would share one-on-one or in some sort of classroom setting. I would like to create sort of a database of those types of videos that are just easier when I'm mentoring and reaching out to people. So please let me know what you thought of this video and what you would like to see me do in the future. You guys have a great time building your resumes. After you put it together, you want to send it to me, I'd gladly look through it, especially if you can send it to me next to a job description. I'll tell you if it matches to me and give you advice on how to tailor it. But good luck and hope to talk to you guys all soon.